The crystal halls of Zithera shimmered under the light of 3 suns, casting rainbow-like reflections across the polished floors. It was a sight that would make any visitor pause in awe, but for King Valor, the beauty of his palace was hollow without his daughter. For months now, the king had walked these halls alone, haunted by the memory of her laughter and the echo of her small footsteps. Princess Liara, his only child, had vanished in the great interstellar war that had consumed half the known galaxy. Everyone in Zithera believed she was gone forever. The war had begun over nothing more than a misunderstanding between distant worlds, but like all wars, it grew fast and deadly. Liara had been brave, leading relief missions to protect civilians caught in the crossfire. The last message from her had been hurried and desperate, and then nothing. No signal, no word, no trace. Her disappearance left the king in grief deeper than any he had known. Every morning King Valor sat in the great observation chamber staring at the stars. He traced the constellations with his fingers as if hoping Liara might be out there somewhere, following the same patterns. His advisors whispered that he should move on, that the kingdom needed him. But to Valor, ruling an empty throne without, his daughter was like holding a garden with no flowers. Outside the palace, the city of Zithera hummed with life. Citizens walked along floating bridges between the crystal towers, and the gardens shimmered with water flowing in midair. Zitherans were tall and elegant, with skin that glowed softly in different shades depending on their mood. They were brilliant, engineers and scholars, inventors who could bend energy into shapes and tools that humans would call magic. Yet, despite all this brilliance, the city seemed dimmer, quieter, missing the light of Liara's presence. Meanwhile, far from the palace, a small human vessel drifted silently through space. Its hull was scratched from many journeys, and its interior smelled faintly of metal and spice. Inside, a man named Ethan studied a holographic map of the Zitheran star system. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy. Most aliens viewed them as curious, perhaps reckless, but always resourceful. Ethan was an explorer, a scholar, someone who had spent his life seeking knowledge and understanding. His mission was simple: learn about Zithera's advanced technology. But he could not know that destiny had something far stranger in store. The signal came first as a whisper on the vessel's sensors, a faint pulse from the edge of the war zone where Liara had last been seen. Ethan leaned closer, adjusting the instruments, and then froze. He had never expected to pick up anything this specific. The pulse repeated, and there was something familiar in its pattern, something alive. It was weak, irregular, but unmistakably artificial. Someone, or something, was sending a signal. Back on Zithera, King Valor received another report from his scouts. "Your Majesty," one said, bowing low, "we have detected movement in the northern border sectors. It matches the description of Princess Liara's vessel." The king's heart skipped a beat. He had walked through this moment in his mind, countless times imagining false alarms and empty hopes. Yet something about the scout's voice carried a weight he could not ignore. Could it be her? Could it truly be Liara? That night, Valor sat alone in his private chamber, staring at a small crystal orb that once belonged to Liara. Inside, tiny lights danced like stars, reflecting memories of her childhood, her first steps, her laughter, the way she had loved floating gardens. "Liara," he whispered, his voice breaking, "if you are alive, come home, far away, in the outskirts of the galaxy." Liara herself struggled to pilot a damaged vessel through the drifting debris left from the war. Her long silver hair floated around her face as she worked, her violet eyes sharp and determined. The past months had been a trial of endurance. She had survived storms, hostile planets, and betrayal. Every day, she had thought about Zithera, about her father, and about how he must be suffering. But she had not survived alone. A human had saved her. Ethan had appeared almost by chance when her ship had failed near an uncharted moon. Where most beings would have seen her as an alien in need, he had seen a person in danger. He had repaired. Her ship shared food and water and taught her ways to navigate the storms of space. Slowly, Trust had grown between them. She had learned to respect his ingenuity, and he had learned to respect her courage. Now, as they approached Scythera, Liara felt a mixture of excitement and fear. How would her father react? How would the citizens respond to a human at her side? She had heard whispers in the universe. Humans were clever, yes, but unpredictable, even dangerous. Yet she knew that without Ethan, she would never have returned. 3. Return was quiet at first. In the middle of the night, a vessel entered Scythera's orbital space, sleek and unusual in design. Alarm bells rang, and royal guards scrambled to investigate. The king himself came to the observation deck, his eyes narrowing as he saw the familiar silhouette of Liara's ship. But it was not alone. A human figure stood at her side, his posture calm, almost confident. The guards hesitated, unsure of protocol. Never before had a human been allowed inside the palace. Vaylor's voice rang out steady and strong despite his trembling heart. Bring them here. When Liara entered the palace, she moved with grace, yet every step carried the weight of months of survival and struggle. Ethan followed quietly, giving respect to the customs of this alien world. The hall was silent. Advisors whispered behind, their hands unsure how to react to this unexpected visitor. Finally, she stopped before her father. For a long moment, neither spoke. Vaylor's hands shook as he reached out. Liara, is it truly you? She nodded, tears filling her eyes. Father, I am here. Ethan stepped forward, bowing low in the Scytheran custom. Your Majesty, he said, his voice careful and calm. I am the human who helped your daughter survive. It was an honor to serve her. The king studied him for a long moment. Humans were strange, unpredictable beings, yet he saw something in Ethan's eyes that mirrored the courage and intelligence he had always admired in his daughter. Slowly, a small smile formed on Vaylor's lips. Perhaps the galaxy was not as lonely as he had feared. That night, the palace was alive again. Liara shared her stories of survival, carefully leaving out the most harrowing moments, choosing instead to focus on courage, friendship, and resilience. Ethan explained his own journey, the wonders he had seen among the stars, and how much he had learned from Liara about bravery and loyalty. King Vaylor listened, sometimes interrupting with questions, sometimes remaining silent, letting the sound of his daughter's voice fill the halls again. For the first time in months, he felt hope. The war had taken much, but it had not taken everything. Liara was alive. She was strong. And now, a human stood beside her, not as a threat, but as an ally. As the first light of Scythera's 3 suns filtered into the crystal towers, Vaylor knew that the kingdom's story was not over. Perhaps, with humans and Scytherans working together, a new chapter of peace and discovery awaited them. And perhaps, just perhaps, the galaxy had more surprises in store than anyone could imagine. For now, however, the king simply held his daughter's hand, grateful that the nightmare of loss had ended. The morning sun reflected off Scythera's crystal towers, bathing the palace in a warm glow. Inside, the corridors were busy with activity, a sign that life had begun to return after months of mourning. Princess Liara moved through the halls with a mixture of purpose and caution. She had survived the vast emptiness of space and returned home, but there was still one thing she needed to do: introduce Ethan properly to the court. Ethan followed quietly, adjusting to the alien architecture. Everything in Scythera was tall, angular and shimmering with colors that humans rarely saw. The floors floated in midair, and stairways twisted like spirals of light. He had seen incredible things in his life, but Scythera's palace was unlike anything. Still, he knew the most important challenge was not the beauty of the halls. It was winning the trust of the king's advisors. In the main hall, the council gathered, their expressions a mix of curiosity, suspicion, and barely hidden disapproval. Scytheran advisors were precise thinkers, often wary of outsiders. Humans were rare here, and their reputation was unpredictable. Some thought them brilliant, others thought them reckless. Ethan could feel their eyes on him, weighing his every movement. King Valor stood tall, though his face betrayed both pride and caution. He had watched his daughter return safely, but the human at her side was an unknown variable. "Today," he began, his voice echoing in the crystal hall, "we welcome our princess back, and with her, an unusual companion." Liara stepped forward, her voice steady. "Father, advisors, citizens," she said. "This is Ethan. He helped me survive in the uncharted reaches of space. Without him, I would not be here today." A murmur ran through the hall. Some advisors whispered among themselves. Others stared wide-eyed. A few glanced at the king, seeking guidance. Valor raised his hand for silence. "He is welcome," he said carefully. "But the court will observe him. All guests must respect Scytheran laws and traditions." Ethan bowed low as Liara had taught him. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice calm, "I honor your customs. I come in friendship, nothing more." The council's leader, a tall Scytheran named Arvin, stepped forward. His eyes, glowing a soft silver, scrutinized Ethan. "Humans are clever," Arvin said. "But cleverness can be dangerous if unchecked. How can we trust that you will act for the good of Scythera?" Ethan met his gaze evenly. "I have no desire to harm your world. I helped Liara because she needed assistance, and because I believe knowledge is strongest when shared. I wish only to help Scythera recover from the war." The room went quiet. Arvin tilted his head. "Words are easy. Proof is more difficult." Liara spoke then, her tone firm. "Ethan has shown proof in ways words cannot describe. He repaired my vessel, helped me navigate the storm fields, and protected me from dangers that none of us could face alone. He is trustworthy because actions define him." Valor studied his daughter closely. Her words carried authority. She had grown in ways even he had not imagined during her time away. He nodded. "Very well. Let him demonstrate his value to Scythera. Let all observe how humans can contribute." Over the next days, Ethan was introduced to the palace's various departments. The royal engineers, scientists, and scholars were fascinated by his methods. Humans approached problems differently than Scytherans. Where Scytherans used energy manipulation and precise calculation, humans relied on observation, improvisation, and creative problem-solving. In one demonstration, the palace engineers struggled to stabilize a floating energy platform. Ethan examined the setup, scratched his head, and then suggested a small, simple adjustment to the support structure. Within hours, the platform stabilized. Gasps of surprise echoed through the hall. A simple human solution had solved a problem that had confounded even Scythera's best minds. Liara watched with pride. "He is not just clever," she said quietly to her father. "He is different, but in a good way. Humans see what we cannot see. They imagine what we cannot imagine." Valor nodded, though his expression was cautious. "Different is not always safe, but perhaps it is necessary." As days passed, citizens began to notice Ethan in the city. At first, some stared and whispered. Humans were still a rarity in this part of the galaxy, and appearances were strikingly different. Ethan's skin was pale compared to the glowing shades of Scytherans. His hands were rougher, his movements less graceful, but soon his actions spoke louder than appearances. He helped farmers design new irrigation systems for floating gardens damaged in the war. He worked with scholars to create simplified communication tools that allowed easier coordination across distant towers. Slowly, he became a figure of curiosity, then respect. Children followed him, asking questions about humans and their strange customs. Adults began to see that his presence could bring innovation rather than disruption. However, not all were pleased. Some council members plotted quietly, worried that humans might gain influence over the kingdom. Arvin, while outwardly polite, questioned every suggestion Ethan made. He met Liara in secret one evening. "Your human friend is clever," he admitted reluctantly, But cleverness can sway the masses. Influence is power. Do you trust him completely? Liara's violet eyes met his. I trust him as much as I trust myself, she replied. Ethan is honest. His loyalty is to life, to survival, to knowledge. That is enough. Arvin left, unsettled. The seeds of change were growing, and he could see that even the king was warming to Ethan. Resistance would require caution. One day, as Liara and Ethan walked through the floating gardens, Ethan turned to her. Your father is careful, he said, but he seems proud despite the concern. I can feel it. Liara smiled softly. He is, more than you know, but you must understand. Change is slow here. People are cautious because they have survived. For millennia, trust must be earned. Ethan nodded. Then we will earn it, together. The following week, the palace faced a small challenge. A communication network that connected the palace towers and the city's outer districts had been damaged in the war. Messages were delayed, causing confusion among administrators. The palace engineers had tried several fixes, but nothing worked consistently. Ethan observed for a day, taking notes and asking questions. Then, using a combination of human intuition and Zitharan technology, he proposed a new network structure. Instead of relying solely on energy relays, he suggested a hybrid system, incorporating physical backup channels and redundant pathways. The engineers were skeptical at first. This is not how we have always done it, one protested. Sometimes, Ethan said calmly, what has always been done is not enough. Survival depends on flexibility. Within hours, the system was operational. Messages flowed seamlessly across the palace and the city. Cheers and applause erupted among the engineers, and even Arvin could not hide a faint smile. For the first time, he admitted silently that humans had value. Liara watched the celebration, her hand brushing Ethan's arm lightly. See, she whispered. It is not magic, not technology, not strength alone. It is perspective. Humans bring perspective. The king observed quietly from his chamber, pleased but reflective. Humans were strange creatures, unpredictable in their ways. Yet, there was something admirable in their curiosity, their creativity, their insistence on action over hesitation. Perhaps the galaxy was wider than he had ever imagined. Perhaps the future required not only Zitharan brilliance but human ingenuity as well. That evening, the royal family gathered for dinner, a rare moment of calm. Liara recounted her journey, highlighting not the dangers, but the lessons learned. Ethan shared stories of human worlds, of creativity, laughter, and persistence. The king listened, fascinated, realizing that in this human, he saw not just a companion to his daughter, but a bridge to a new era. Still, Vaylor knew that not all were convinced. Whispers of doubt and caution floated through the palace. Yet as he watched Liara and Ethan work together, he understood that trust, once earned, could change the heart of even the most cautious kingdom. As night fell, the palace glowed under the three suns fading light, and for the first time in many months, hope thrummed through Zithara. Liara had returned, Ethan had arrived, and the kingdom's future, once uncertain, now held the promise of cooperation, understanding, and discovery. The story of humans and Zitharans was just beginning, and the galaxy itself seemed to lean closer, listening for the next chapter. The morning sun bathed Zithara in soft golden light, reflecting off the crystal towers like scattered stars. The city hummed with renewed life, and the palace, once filled with whispers of loss, now buzzed with curiosity and cautious excitement. Princess Liara moved gracefully through the halls, her presence both comforting and inspiring. The people had welcomed her back as a hero, but today, she had a new mission: to bridge the gap between Zitharans and the humans who had so far remained strangers in their world. Ethan followed, carrying a small set of devices he had built himself. They were simple, by human standards: small communication aids, portable energy stabilizers, and sensors. But in Zithara, they were revolutionary because they applied human ingenuity in ways the aliens had never considered. The engineers and Scholars were eager to see how these tools could help the kingdom recover from the war's damage. "Father expects great things," Liara said quietly to Ethan as they entered the council hall. "Not just survival, he wants progress, and he wants the people to trust you as much as I do." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of the responsibility. "I understand. I didn't come here to impress anyone. I came to help. If that earns trust, then so be it." The council had gathered again, this time to observe a demonstration. Liara and Ethan had proposed a collaborative workshop, where humans and Zytherans would work together on solutions for repairing and improving the city. It was a bold move. Some advisors whispered that humans were unpredictable, and that relying on one human, no matter how clever, could be risky. King Valor watched silently from his seat at the head of the hall. His eyes softened as he observed his daughter leading with confidence. She spoke with clarity, explaining the importance of combining different perspectives. "We survived the war by relying on strength," she said. "But now, we must thrive by using intelligence, creativity, and cooperation. Our ideas, combined with human insight, can make Zythera stronger than ever." Ethan stepped forward. "Zytherans are brilliant engineers," he said, "but sometimes solutions are not about power or precision alone. They are about flexibility and perspective. Humans approach problems differently, and together, we can solve challenges that seemed impossible." The engineers gathered around a damaged energy relay, which had been unstable since the war. They had tried every known Zytheran method, but the system still faltered. Ethan observed quietly, taking notes, then gently suggested a minor adjustment to the energy flow pattern, combining human improvisation with Zytheran principles. The relay stabilized immediately. Gasps of surprise filled the room. Engineers whispered to each other, astonished at how a simple human solution had solved a problem that had confounded even the most brilliant Zytheran minds. Liara smiled at her father. "See? It is not magic. It is perspective. Humans see what we cannot see. They imagine what we cannot imagine." Valor's expression softened, though he remained cautious. "Different does not always mean safe," he said, "but perhaps it is necessary." Over the next week, workshops were held across the city. Citizens from different districts, scientists, engineers, artisans, and even students worked alongside Ethan and other human volunteers who had recently arrived. They repaired water systems, reinforced floating gardens, and improved communication networks. Humans brought simplicity and creativity, while Zytherans contributed their advanced technology and precision. Together, they discovered solutions neither could have achieved alone. Children were fascinated by Ethan, following him as he showed them how small adjustments could make big changes. "Why does it work like that?" asked a young Zytheran girl, her eyes wide with wonder. Ethan smiled. "Sometimes the easiest way is not the most obvious way. Humans like to try different ideas, even if they seem strange at first." Liara watched, pride swelling in her chest. She had always known humans were clever, but seeing them interact with her people, learning from each other, filled her with hope. "Father," she said later, "humans are not just visitors. They are allies, and they can teach us as much as we can teach them." Valor nodded thoughtfully. He had seen humans before, in distant colonies and trading outposts. They were bold, curious, and unpredictable, but he had never seen one work so patiently, so carefully, alongside Zytherans, respecting their culture while offering new ideas. Perhaps this was the beginning of a new era for his kingdom. Not everyone was convinced. Some advisors whispered behind closed doors, worried that humans might gain influence in the kingdom. Arvin, still skeptical, observed the workshops from a distance. He saw the citizens' admiration for Ethan and Liara's growing authority, and a pang of unease stirred in him. "Humans are clever," he muttered to a colleague, "but cleverness can sway the masses. Influence is power, and power can be dangerous." Liara was aware of the quiet murmurs. One evening, as she walked through the palace gardens with Ethan, she spoke softly. "Not everyone trusts you," she said. "Some see humans as outsiders, as threats. You must be patient." Ethan nodded. "I will not force trust. I will earn it. And if they refuse, well, that is their choice. The palace gardens were a place of calm after long days of work. Flowers floated in midair, water cascaded in streams that defied gravity, and the soft hum of energy fields created a serene atmosphere. Liara and Ethan walked among the floating blooms, discussing plans for the next workshop. We could focus on transportation next, Ethan suggested. Floating platforms that connect districts more efficiently. Small energy optimizations could make movement faster and safer. Liara smiled. Excellent. Let's show them what collaboration can do. The next project brought citizens from all over the city. Humans and Zitherans worked together to redesign the city's transport systems. They experimented with energy fields, mechanical supports, and human ingenuity. Children watched in amazement as platforms moved smoothly through the city, carrying citizens safely and efficiently. By the end of the week, the results were undeniable. The city was safer, more efficient, and more beautiful than before. Zitherans began to view humans differently, not as strangers or curiosities, but as partners. Trust, once cautious and hesitant, began to grow. King Valor observed all of this quietly from his chamber. He had expected progress, yes, but he had not expected the rapid change in public perception. Humans had brought more than solutions. They had brought hope, creativity, and a new way of thinking. One evening, he called Liara to his side. "You have returned stronger than I imagined," he said, his voice soft. "And your companion, he is unusual. But I see now that he is not dangerous. He is valuable." Liara smiled. "Father, humans are different, yes, but different can be good. They help us see what we cannot see, solve problems we cannot solve, and inspire people to think beyond tradition." The king nodded. "Perhaps this is the future. Perhaps cooperation, not isolation, will make Zithera thrive." Yet, the story was far from over. Not everyone was pleased with these changes. Arvin and a few other advisors continued to question the humans' influence, though they could not deny the results. Quietly, they began to plan, not with malice, but with caution. The kingdom was changing, and change often brings unease. For Liara and Ethan, the focus remained on their work. They organized new projects, encouraged collaboration, and nurtured understanding between humans and Zitherans. The workshops became a symbol of hope, a demonstration that cooperation across species was not only possible, but necessary for the kingdom's survival and growth. Children played together, humans and Zitherans learning from each other, while adults began to discuss ideas that would have seemed impossible months ago. Science, engineering, and culture began to blend, and the palace became a hub of creativity. One evening, after a long day, Liara and Ethan stood on a balcony overlooking the city. Lights sparkled across the floating towers, gardens floated gracefully in midair, and citizens moved about their daily lives. "Look at this," Liara said softly. "All this because we chose to work together." Ethan smiled. "It is only the beginning. There is so much more we can do together." Liara nodded. "Yes, and one day the people of Zithera will see humans not as outsiders but as friends, as equals." The night sky stretched above them, stars glittering in the darkness. The kingdom was alive again, full of hope, curiosity, and potential. The return of the princess had not only healed a father's heart, but had also opened the door to a future where humans and Zitherans could learn from each other, grow together, and explore the galaxy as partners. For the first time in many months, Zithera was not just surviving, it was thriving. And the bond between two very different species promised a future brighter than anyone could have imagined. The city of Zithera glowed under the light of its 3 suns, but the calm of the morning was deceptive. High above the floating towers, dark clouds began to form, twisting and churning in patterns that made even the most experienced meteorologists uneasy. Zithera had survived many storms, but this one was different. A plasma storm of unusual intensity. the kind that could destabilize energy fields, damage floating structures, and endanger thousands of citizens. King Valor was the first to be informed. His advisors rushed into the council chamber, voices filled with concern. "Your Majesty," Arvin said, his usual calm replaced by tension. "The storm is approaching faster than predicted. The energy fields protecting the city may not hold." Valor's eyes narrowed, but he remained composed. "We have faced dangers before," he said quietly, "and we will face this one together. Gather the engineers, the scholars, and anyone who can help. Liara will lead the coordination with her human companion." He paused, looking at Arvin. Their cooperation is essential. Liara was already in the command room, monitoring the storm on a holographic map. Ethan stood beside her, pointing out possible weaknesses in the city's energy shields. "If the storm hits the northern districts first, we need to reinforce the supports on those towers," he said. "The floating gardens will also need extra stabilization. I can help set up emergency energy buffers." Liara nodded. "Good. We'll divide teams. Humans and Zitherans working together. No hesitation. Everyone's expertise matters." The palace was suddenly alive with controlled chaos. Engineers rushed through the halls, carrying tools and energy modulators. Scholars worked on predictive models of the storm's movement. Citizens were evacuated from the most vulnerable areas, guided by volunteers. Humans and Zitherans moved side by side, coordinating through a mix of universal language protocols and improvised signals that Ethan had devised. The first wave of plasma strikes hit the outer floating gardens. Lightning-like arcs of energy danced across the sky, causing some minor disturbances in the energy fields. Yet, thanks to Ethan's human-engineered stabilizers combined with Zetheran shields, the gardens held. Citizens looked on in amazement, as humans and Zitherans worked together to prevent disaster. Liara moved quickly between teams, giving instructions, calming fears, and offering encouragement. Her voice was strong, carrying authority and warmth. "Keep the energy buffers aligned. Focus on the supports. We can do this together." Ethan worked tirelessly beside her. "Shift the stabilizers 3 degrees clockwise. That will redistribute the energy load evenly across the platforms." His hands moved swiftly, adjusting devices while explaining the reasoning to curious Zitharan engineers. Hours passed. The storm grew stronger, yet the city's defenses held. Humans and Zitherans communicated seamlessly, combining methods and sharing knowledge. Every time an energy field faltered, Ethan suggested adjustments, and the Zitherans implemented them with precision. Every time a structural support wavered, Liara coordinated teams to reinforce it before any damage occurred. In one particularly dangerous moment, a floating transport hub began to tilt under the storm's pressure. Citizens were trapped inside, unable to exit safely. Ethan dashed forward with a team of Zitharan engineers. Using a combination of human, improvisation, and Zitharan energy manipulation, they stabilized the hub just in time. The citizens cheered, gratitude shining in their eyes. From the observation deck, King Valor watched the efforts with awe. He had always known humans were clever, but seeing one work so calmly and effectively under such pressure was remarkable. Liara moved among the teams, her voice steady, her presence inspiring. The combination of human creativity and Zitharan precision had saved the city from certain disaster. Arven, standing nearby, observed silently. His skepticism had not vanished, but it had shifted. Humans were not just clever, they were reliable, resourceful, and capable of teamwork in ways he had not anticipated. Perhaps Liara had been right all along. By nightfall, the storm began to weaken. The plasma clouds receded, leaving the city intact, save for minor damage that could be repaired quickly. Exhausted but victorious, the teams gathered in the main hall. Citizens applauded, engineers smiled, and even the most cautious advisors offered quiet nods of approval. Liara turned to Ethan, her eyes shining with pride and relief. "We did it," she said softly. "Together." Ethan smiled, though his face was streaked with sweat and dust. We did it because we worked as one. Humans and Zitherans, combining strengths. That is what matters. King Valor stepped forward, placing a hand on his daughter's shoulder. I have never been more proud of you, he said. Then turning to Ethan, he continued, and you, human, have earned not just my respect, but the respect of all Zithera. You have proven your worth through courage, intelligence, and cooperation. The city owes you gratitude. Ethan bowed respectfully. Thank you, Your Majesty. I only did what anyone would do to help a friend in a kingdom. For the first time, the tension and suspicion that had surrounded humans in Zithera began to fade. Citizens saw the value of collaboration, and advisors understood that the unique abilities humans brought could enhance their society rather than threaten it. In the following days, the palace and city began to repair minor damage from the storm. Workshops and lessons were organized to share the techniques humans had used to stabilize energy fields and structures. The blending of Zitheran precision and human improvisation became a new model for problem-solving. Liara and Ethan continued to lead projects together. They organized classes where humans taught creative approaches to engineering and science, while Zitherans explained their advanced energy manipulation techniques. Children learned eagerly, inspired by the partnership of two very different species working for a common goal. Even Arvin, once skeptical, began to participate. Quietly observing the progress, he saw that the collaboration brought not only solutions but innovation. Humans had a way of looking at problems that challenged tradition, and Zitherans had the skill to make those ideas practical. Together, they were unstoppable. One evening, as the sun set over the floating gardens, Liara and Ethan stood on a balcony, watching children play in the newly stabilized platforms. Do you see them? Liara said, smiling. They are learning that differences are strengths, not weaknesses. Ethan nodded. Yes, and the kingdom is learning the same lesson. Humans and Zitherans can do so much together. Liara's smile grew softer, thoughtful. I hope this is just the beginning. There are so many more challenges ahead, so many opportunities. And I want the kingdom to face them with curiosity, courage, and cooperation. Ethan placed a hand on hers. Then we will face them together. I've learned a lot from you, Liara. Not just about survival, but about leadership, resilience, and hope. Liara looked up at the three suns setting over Zithera. Their light reflected off the crystal towers, casting long golden shadows across the floating city. For the first time in months, the kingdom seemed alive in a new way. Not just restored from war, but strengthened by shared knowledge, trust, and friendship. The storm had tested them, challenged them, and reminded them of the fragility of life. But it had also shown them what was possible when humans and Zitherans worked together. The kingdom had survived, not through force or dominance, but through ingenuity, compassion, and collaboration. In the quiet moments after the crisis, King Valor spoke to Liara privately. Your return has changed the kingdom, he said, and your human companion. He has changed it in ways I could not have imagined. Perhaps the galaxy itself is teaching us that we are stronger when we embrace what is different. Liara nodded, feeling the truth in her father's words. Yes, father, and together we can face whatever comes next. As night fell over Zithera, the palace glowed with renewed energy. Citizens slept peacefully, children dreamed of adventures, and the lessons of the storm lingered in every corner. Cooperation, trust, and understanding could overcome even the greatest challenges. Ethan stood beside Liara, gazing at the city below. Do you think the people will truly accept humans? He asked quietly. Liara smiled. They already are. It will take time, yes. But you've shown them that humans are not threats. They are friends, allies, and equals. That is a gift that will last longer than any victory in war. Above the city, the stars shone brightly, as if celebrating the harmony between two worlds. And in the heart of Zithera, a princess and a human stood side by side, ready to guide their kingdom into a future filled with hope, discovery, and shared knowledge. The crisis had passed, but the partnership between humans and Zitherans was only beginning, and the galaxy, vast and mysterious, seemed to hum with possibilities yet to be explored. The morning sun rose over Zithra, casting long golden beams across the floating towers and crystal gardens. The city looked alive in a way it had not for years. War had left scars, but the kingdom had survived. And more than that, it had learned to grow stronger, smarter, and more united. Princess Liara walked through the palace halls, her heart filled with pride. The people she had once left behind now looked at her not only as their princess, but as a leader who had guided them through loss, survival, and renewal. Ethan walked beside her, adjusting a small device that helped regulate energy fields in the city. Humans were now accepted in Zithra, though still rare, and Ethan had become a symbol of cooperation and ingenuity. Children waved as he passed, and adults smiled in quiet appreciation. The palace had become a place not only of governance, but of learning, creativity, and exchange. King Valor observed all of this from his private chamber, the corners of his eyes crinkled in pride. "Liara," he said softly as she entered, "you have changed more than the city. You have changed hearts. Not just mine, but the hearts of our people. And you have shown that humans can be a part of our future." Liara smiled and approached her father. "They are part of the future because they are willing to share, Father. Humans bring curiosity, creativity, and courage that complement our own strengths. Together, we can face anything." Valor nodded, feeling a deep sense of relief and joy. He had feared the loss of his daughter, and for months the palace had been a quiet shell of its former self. Now, with Liara alive and Ethan at her side, the kingdom felt whole again. Outside, the city was bustling with activity. Workshops had become regular events where humans and Zithrans collaborated to improve every aspect of life. Floating gardens were redesigned for efficiency and beauty. Transport platforms moved smoothly between districts, and communication networks connected even the most distant towers. Citizens were learning from humans, while humans learned Zithran, ways of energy manipulation, architecture, and science. Liara and Ethan led a class for young students that day. Children crowded around, eager to see the demonstration. Ethan showed them how a small change in the energy grid could stabilize an entire district, while Liara explained the principles behind the shield designs. The children's faces lit up with excitement as they tested small devices themselves. "See?" Liara said to Ethan quietly. "They are learning that being different is not a weakness. It is a strength. That lesson will stay with them for life." Ethan nodded, smiling. "And the kingdom will remember too. Humans are not strangers here. They are allies. And allies make everyone stronger." Even Arvin, the once skeptical advisor, watched the classes in silence, a faint smile on his face. He had resisted accepting humans at first, fearing their influence, yet he could no longer deny the value they brought. The workshops had not only improved the city, they had inspired its citizens to think differently, to innovate, and to collaborate. That evening, Liara and Ethan walked along one of the floating bridges, watching the sunset reflect in the crystal towers. "Do you ever regret leaving?" Ethan asked softly, meaning the vast uncharted regions of space where he had once explored alone. Liara shook her head. "No. I survived, learned, and returned. And now, I can help my kingdom grow stronger. Perhaps that is more important than anything else." Ethan glanced at her, admiration shining in his eyes. "You are remarkable, Liara. You didn't just survive, you inspired change. Humans and Zithrans working together. That is something few would have imagined." Liara smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest. "The galaxy is full of surprises, and it seems it wanted us to find each other." The palace had planned a celebration to honor the collaboration between humans and Zithrans. Citizens filled the streets, floating gardens sparkled with light, and music resonated from crystal instruments, blending with human melodies in a joyful harmony. King Valor stood at the palace balcony, looking out over the crowd with quiet satisfaction. He could see his daughter standing proudly beside Ethan, both of them waving to the citizens below. Liara turned to the king. "Father," she said, The people have embraced change, and humans are now part of our community. But this is only the beginning. Together, we can explore new worlds, create new knowledge, and ensure that Zithera prospers for generations to come. Vaylor's eyes glistened. Yes, my daughter. Together, we will. And I am proud that you have returned with not just your courage but with a friend and ally who has proven the value of cooperation. The celebration continued into the night. Citizens shared food, stories, and laughter. Humans and Zitherans mingled freely, exchanging ideas, learning from each other and forging bonds that would last far longer than any fleeting war. The kingdom was alive with hope, curiosity, and friendship. In the days that followed, the palace formally welcomed humans as partners in the kingdom's affairs. Workshops and councils included both Zitherans and humans, ensuring that decisions incorporated different perspectives. New technologies were tested and improved through collaboration, and cultural exchanges enriched both species. Humans learned Zitheran music, art, and customs, while Zitherans discovered storytelling, humor, and creative problem-solving techniques from humans. King Vaylor often reflected on how different life had become in just a few months. The war had been devastating, but it had also shown the need for new ways of thinking. Humans, once outsiders, had become friends, allies, and partners in a way that no one could have predicted. One morning, Liara and Ethan stood on the highest balcony of the palace, gazing at the city below. "It is beautiful," Ethan said softly. "All this because people chose to work together." Liara nodded. "Yes, and it will only grow stronger. The galaxy is vast, full of possibilities. Humans and Zitherans together. We can explore, create, and inspire. That is the future I see." Ethan smiled. "Then we will face it together, side by side." The king joined them quietly. "You have both done more than survive or return," he said. "You have changed the hearts and minds of this kingdom. That is a victory greater than any battle." Liara reached out and took her father's hand. "The future is brighter now because we chose cooperation, trust, and understanding, not conflict." Vaylor squeezed her hand, pride swelling in his chest. "Indeed, my daughter, indeed." As night fell, the city of Zithera glittered like a jewel under the stars. Citizens celebrated, children laughed, and humans and Zitherans alike shared in the joy of discovery and partnership. The kingdom had endured the trials of war, survived storms of unimaginable intensity, and emerged stronger and wiser. The lessons learned would remain. Differences were not to be feared. They were to be embraced. Creativity and tradition, courage and intelligence, humanity and alien wisdom, all could coexist and thrive when shared with respect and trust. Liara and Ethan walked together through the palace gardens, the soft glow of floating lights reflecting in their eyes. "We have come far," Liara said. "And yet this is only the beginning." Ethan nodded. "Yes. There are other worlds, other challenges, other people who need to see what cooperation can do. But Zithera will be the example, the proof." The king watched them silently, heart full of hope. His daughter had returned, alive and wiser. A human, once a stranger, had proven his worth and become part of their family in every meaningful way. The kingdom was thriving, its citizens inspired, and the future stretched out before them, full of promise and possibility. Above the crystal towers, the stars shone bright. The galaxy, vast and endless, held mysteries, adventures, and knowledge, yet to be discovered. But for Zithera, a new era had begun, an era where courage, cooperation, and ingenuity transcended differences, and where humans and Zitherans stood together, ready to shape a brighter future. And in that moment, the kingdom, the princess, the human, and the king all knew. The story of Zithera and its people was no longer defined by war, loss, or fear. It was defined by friendship, trust, and the incredible power of working together. Proof that even across the stars, hope could thrive, and humanity in its purest sense could shine. The three suns rose again over Zithera the next morning, casting light across the floating gardens and crystal towers. And with it, a promise. The galaxy was vast, the future unknown, but united hearts could face anything, and together, anything was possible.